Hi, I'm Addison Christie, and my teaching strategy was the Think Aloud strategy. This strategy is a powerful instructional method where teachers verbalize their thoughts while reading or solving a problem so that students can understand the mental processes that skilled learners use. In other words, the teacher says out loud what is happening in their head while reading, thinking, or learning. This helps make invisible thinking visible to students so they can imagine what their thoughts are. When teachers use Think Aloud, they model how good readers or problem solvers approach understanding something new. They demonstrate how to make predictions, ask questions, clarify confusing parts, and summarize information as they read or think. The goal is for students to begin using the same strategies on their own. For example, if a teacher is reading a passage about penguins, they might stop and say, this paragraph mentions cold temperatures and snow. That makes me think that penguins might live in very cold places. They would keep reading to see if the text tells me where they live. By doing this, the teacher shows students how to slow down, monitor comprehension, and make sense of what they read. Students get to see that reading isn't just saying the words, it's an active process of thinking, questioning, connecting ideas. The Think Aloud strategy is especially useful in reading instruction, but may also be used in math, science, and writing. In math, for instance, a teacher might say, I'm not sure how to start this problem, but I do notice there's two fractions with different denominators, so the first thing I'll need to do is find the common denominator. In writing, a teacher might model thinking about word choice. I want my sentence to sound stronger, so instead of saying nice, I'm gonna say generous. This strategy supports cognitive, which means thinking about your own thoughts and thinking about your own thinking. When students hear a teacher's thought process, they learn to reflect on their own thoughts, monitor understanding, fix mistakes when something doesn't make sense. Think Louds are especially effective for English language learners and students with reading difficulties because they provide clear examples of how language, vocabulary, and comprehension skills are used together. Teachers can include visual clues, gestures, or sentence frames like, I think this means this part confuses me because I predict that. I think this is going to happen because. Over time, teachers gradually release responsibility to students, encouraging them to use Think Alouds independently, first in small groups or pairs, and then later on their own. When used regularly, Think Alouds improve comprehension, vocabulary, understanding, and student engagement. The Think Aloud strategy is a teaching method that helps students see how expert learners make sense of information by talking about their thoughts. Teachers show students how to predict, question, clarify, and summarize. These are skills that are essential for success all across all subjects. A theorist that supports Think Alouds is Vygotsky. In his social cultural theory, Vygotsky believed that learning is a social process that children construct understanding through interaction with others, especially with a more knowledgeable person, such as a teacher. In a read aloud, the teacher reads the text aloud to students, modeling fluent reading tone and comprehension strategies while student listens and responds. This activity represents Vygotsky's idea that learning begins on the social level between people before it becomes internalized within the individual. When teachers pause to discuss vocabulary, make predictions, or think aloud about what's happening in the story, they're giving students a window into expert comprehension. Over time, students begin to intimidate these strategies internally, using them when they read on their own, just as Vygotsky described. Also, in his zone of proximal development, this is one of his most important ideas and concepts. It represents the gap between what a learner can do independently and what they can do with guidance or support. During a read aloud, a teacher teachers scaffold students' comprehension by explaining complex ideas or vocabulary that might be too difficult for a student to understand on their own. And they model how to make connections, visualize, summarize, or ask questions about the text, and they encourage students to share their thoughts, guiding them towards a deeper understanding. In doing so, the teacher is operating within each student's CPD, helping them move from assisted understanding to independent mastery. Vygotsky emphasized that language is the foundation of thought and learning. Through Read Aloud, students hear rich, academic, and expressive language that they might not encounter in everyday conversation. This exposure builds their vocabulary and comprehension structures, which supports both oral and written language development. He viewed language as a tool of thinking, so when teachers engage students in conversations about a text, asking, why do you think that the character did that, or what might happen next, or what do you think the ending will be, they're helping students use language to reason and infer their understanding. Vygotsky's ideas inspired the concept of scaffolding, later formalized by other theorists. In Read Aloud, scaffolding happens naturally as the teacher supports students' understanding step by step. The teacher models fluent reading and comprehension, the class discussions together, and then the students even apply these strategies independently, doing their own reading. I do, we do, you do. This gradual release of responsibility mirrors Vygotsky's process of moving from social learning to independent learning. And now for my lesson plan. I did my lesson for third grade students. My lesson is English Language Arts and Reading. The theme and topic of my lesson plan is using informational text and finding the main idea that supports the theme. So how I start my lesson is, first, my objectives of my lesson are students will read a paragraph and identify the main idea with at least 2 supporting details with 80% accuracy, and that's my content objective. And then my language objective is students will orally describe and then write the main idea in supporting details with reference to sentence stems. The main idea is blank because of blank, and a detail that supports it is blank. To start my lesson, I have pictures of penguins and say, what do you notice about these penguins? What did you already know? And then students will share in pairs. And then I say, today I'm going to teach you how to find the main idea by listening to our own thinking. I'll show you how I use my brain to figure it out through something called Think Alouds. We begin by reading the first paragraph slowly. I demonstrate. I notice words like cold, Antarctica, and snow. This shows me this paragraph is mostly about where penguins live. We start with guided vocabulary practice. I'll show cards with pictures of main ideas and details students repeat and use in a short oral sentence. The main idea tells what it's about, and the idea gives proof. And then we move on to interactive Think Alouds. So I ask students to help me with the next paragraph. Let's read this paragraph together. Stop when you think you see clues to the main idea. What are you thinking? Students share short Think Alouds. I think it's about penguins because it says they waddle, something like that. And for the practice and application, we get into the guided practice, and pair students will read another paragraph. Each pair does a partner think aloud. One reads and the other says what they're thinking. Students highlight keywords and fill in graphic organizers with main ideas and details. And then we move on to independent practice. This is where students are going to read an additional paragraph independently, and then they fill in their organizer with their thoughts. For supports for my ELLs, I have visuals, sentence frames on charts, partners match strategically for language modeling, teacher circulates promoting with questions like, what are you thinking? How do you know that's the main idea? I have a formative assessment of an exit ticket. It's part of one of the worksheets they're already doing, and then I'll collect that at the end of the lesson, and everyone will be graded. But that is my lesson plan. That is my teaching strategy. I think Alouds are a great source and to incorporate into your classroom.